If you are pregnant, listen up because there is an upcoming live pregnancy workshop available to help you prepare your body and pelvic floor for birth and beyond. We discuss ways to reduce risk of perineal tears and episiotomy. We learn how to reduce risk of pelvic floor trauma and, importantly, ways to support a strong postnatal recovery. This free workshop called Birth Strong is physio-created and designed to help you feel more confident and empowered about your upcoming childbirth experience. Head to fitnessmama.com/pregnancy workshop and the link is in the show notes. Once more, that's www.fitnessmama.com/pregnancy workshop, all one word. Can't wait to see you there. If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, FitNest Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at FitNest Mama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Today I chat with beautiful Noni, who is a member inside FitNest Mama. Noni is a registered midwife and also a sonographer, so she's got a great story to tell. She's now 6 months postpartum with the first baby, and this story today takes you through her pregnancy journey. She discusses her birth story, which is a vaginal delivery. She talks us through stretch and sweep, the artificial rupture membranes, the use of the TENS machine, how she prepared for birth, her recovery after birth, getting back into running. So got some beautiful nuggets of wisdom from Noni. It was a delight to chat to Noni, and I trust you're going to love this episode. Before we do dive in, just want to come and invite you to join us inside FitNest Mama. You'll notice during this episode, Noni talks a lot about the app, the online app that she was part of. FitNest Mama can help you exercise during pregnancy, even if you've got pelvic girdle pain. FitNest Mama can help you prepare your body for birth with that important information about pelvic floor, the perineal massage, helping to prevent tears and episiotomy. And then FitNest Mama can help you with your postpartum recovery and help you get back into running with our 12-week return to running plan. So there's a 7-day free trial. Head to the website, fitnessmama.com, and the link is in the show notes. Right, let's dive straight in. Hey, Noni, thank you so much for joining me on the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. You're a beautiful member inside FitNest Mama, the app, and you are a midwife and sonographer, which is a really cool combination that I'd love to get more information about. But you're going to share your birth story today.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So you got little Felix, he's 6 months old.
He is. He's a very joyful baby. He's very smiley and happy and
gorgeous. So if you've listened to these birth stories before for a while, I love to really, dive into the pregnancy journey in terms of, how your body coped, but also obviously the preparation for birth. I love to discuss the birth, but also the recovery aspect, how you're feeling in your body and motherhood, and just a few little things. just a short 5-minute episode. Yeah. But let's start at the start, Noni. Can you share your journey to becoming pregnant? Was it a long journey? How did it evolve?
Well, I'm like a bull at a gate. Once I get something in my head, it's just got to happen. And my husband will attest to that. But I had just finished my ultrasound course, which is supposed to be 2 years, but it blew out to, closer to 4 with thanks to COVID and everything else. And in the middle of that was a big move over to Perth from the eastern states for my training, which has been amazing. But yeah, I finished my course and sort of just went, right, I was 34 at the time, 33. Anyway, thinking that, I better hurry up because you never know how long it's going to take. And working in the area of pregnancy and birth for a few years, I had seen a lot of things. And I thought, if there's a struggle, which happens, I want it to still lead into hopefully only being, mid to later 30s of having my first child, just because that's just what aligned for my husband and I. So then we decided to start trying, and we fell pregnant on our first month of trying, but that unfortunately ended in quite an early miscarriage. And I know the language around it is, well, some people say, that was just a chemical pregnancy because it was only, a few days after having your period or the due date of your period that I then got my period. But the fact is there was a positive test. I decided to lean into it and be joyful because I thought I didn't want to have a lot of anxiety around it. I just wanted to be excited and happy. So I was. So then, that ended in a miscarriage, which was, it was fine. I guess I was quite matter of fact about it. But then starting to try again, and we didn't wait because it wasn't, it was such an early loss that it was not something that I thought I need to wait for. So we just tried again, and then I really started getting in my own head about it, and I got really anxious thinking, what's this journey going to be like for us? But fortunately, we got pregnant again quite quickly, and Felix stuck around. So,
amazing. Can I backtrack a little bit, because I know if I don't ask it now, I'm going to forget. Did you finish university and become a midwife straight away?
Yeah. So I started studying so I did my full 3-year Bachelor of Midwifery through University of Newcastle in New South Wales. And I did that as an advanced, or whatever it's called, age student. I think I was 23 or 24.
But surely they don't call it aged student.
Yeah, I think it's like advanced.
Yes,
I don't know what it is.
Uncomplimentary name. Yeah.
Yeah, not fresh from school. So I did that and finished and worked as a midwife for a few years, and then the opportunity to do sonography came up, or created that opportunity, I guess, and I started that and kept working casually as a midwife. But then,
so I'm intrigued. If you're working as a midwife, what made you want to study sonography? What drew you to sonography?
I wanted to diversify my skill set, and I'm quite interested in nutrition, so I looked at nutrition, but then I sort of thought, well, that might not lean me enough to be as diverse as I wanted to be in terms of, will it get me off the floor from day to day? I don't know. Although I do love day to day, working as a midwife, it's tough. And I think in terms of family planning, it was a bit like, well, my husband's a nurse, I'm a midwife, what are we going to do? And I floated around a few other ideas. And then this one popped into my mind. My sister-in-law is a sonographer as well, so she'd been talking about it quite a bit. And then I thought, well, that's quite a niche little area that I could potentially fill some gaps, because I was hearing a lot of sort of negative stories about the experiences that women were having when they were going for their ultrasounds in pregnancy. And I thought, why can't we have that woman-centered care nestled within ultrasound? We know that sometimes things don't always go to plan. And so as the sonographer, you then need to know how to manage that situation. Yeah. So that was kind of where I thought, I could link that gap. But now that I have both of the qualifications, it's a bit like, well, how do you put them together? Like, I know that they work, but how do I then work as a midwife and a sonographer? And I think at the moment I am just taking my midwifery skills in terms of patient-centered care and
I love it.
Yeah, so
fantastic.
The future brings.
So you find out you're pregnant.
Yes.
After a relatively easy conception period, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
Talk us through how was that process of finding out you're pregnant?
I kind of felt like I was pregnant before I did the test, and this time I waited until a week after my, expected period date, because I thought, right, let's keep it, I don't know, linear. And yeah, but I felt quite different in my body, and I think I just had that feeling, I suppose. So then it came up positive, and my husband even said that. He goes, well, of course it is, because I can, which I don't know, it was a nice moment. But yeah, then the pregnancy itself was pretty straightforward, to be honest. I have been a runner for many years, so I kept jogging, but I only was doing like a walk run sort of thing, because I was quite aware of, overheating my body and all these things, and living in Perth, it was summer, so it was really hot. So lots of just walk runs and Pilates and things like that to try and stay healthy. But then decided at 16 weeks that I didn't really want to run anymore. I wasn't enjoying it. It was starting to make me feel a bit anxious. So I thought, well, what's the point in doing something that's making me feel anxious? So then I just continued Pilates and gentle kind of stretching and things like that. And I had a very straightforward pregnancy until we got to the beginning of the third trimester. And then I started experiencing some SIJ pain, so sacroiliac joint pain, which I was devouring all of your podcasts and everything I could find. And I ended up getting some compression tights from someone that you interviewed, Sarah, I think her name was, from Solidea.
Oh, great. Sarah Cleaver.
And they were awesome. They made
amazing.
Me, feel like I could get about my day-to-day stuff. I still had a massive limp, which was pretty funny from someone being so fit and healthy, I suppose, so then all of a sudden like hobbling along. But, it is what it is. That was the only sort of physical issue that I had during my pregnancy.
And at what stage did you join FitNest Mama? Was that was during when you had the pelvic girdle pain, or before?
Yeah, it was during, because I needed something. And I know that you'd said on the podcast that, that it was targeted at everybody in any kind of capacity. So I was like, well, that's me. So, and it was actually super helpful. I think there was one 7-minute stretch that I ended up learning off by heart, essentially, and I did that every day because it was just quick and easy, and it made all the difference. And I still do some of the movements like now of a morning when Felix is playing, because it just gives you that freedom of movement in your pelvis, which feels good, if nothing else.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah,
I think probably, I actually don't know the stats, but such a high percentage of women join FitNest Mama with the pelvic girdle pain, because, and I know this is why I created it, because it's so hard to exercise with pelvic girdle pain, and you don't want to exercise and cause more pain. So to find workouts that will help not increase the exercise and hopefully not increase the pain and hopefully reduce the pain is
definitely.
Great.
And I went to a physio at the hospital, and she sort of said, "Oh, keep doing what you're doing, but just split leg bits and pieces and all of that." And so I did, and that was fine, and it worked until it didn't. And then I thought, well, I need a bit more. So
okay, amazing.
It was a great thing.
Okay, so you had the SIJ pain in your last trimester, you mentioned.
Yeah.
You're working through that. What about birth preparation? Like, did you have ideas around how you wanted birth to work out? Talk us through that process.
So I kind of always thought that I'd do a hypnobirthing course, because I was intrigued to learn a little bit more about it. I knew the principles of it, but hadn't really dove into it. But then I listened to an audiobook, and I went, oh, okay, do understand the principles, and I probably don't really need to do a full course. So I re-listened to the book with my husband, and we made a really big effort to apply those principles regularly. And we set up a room in, well, it's, Felix's room, but I mean, he's in our room, let's be honest. He'll probably be in there for many, many years to come. But yeah, we set up a little space and put fairy lights around and made it like a little birthing space. And I wrote my own affirmations because I thought, reading them off of a card that I don't feel affiliated with didn't really work for me. So I made my own and I hung those around. And a couple of times a week, we would both come into the room and he'd do the soft touch massage and I'd do the breathing. And it was just a nice time. And then some days when, neither of us could really be bothered with doing that, we would just come in here and we'd joke around and have a fun time and a laugh and listen to music. And we've made like not a podcast, made a playlist for birth and also a playlist for Felix to kind of listen to throughout his years with all different music from our families, who likes what and things like that. So we kind of just tried to relax together and spend time together. And I think that was really important because he obviously was my birth partner and we have a good relationship, but the more kind of comfortable you are with someone and, the better it's going to be in that instance, because you are so vulnerable during labour and birth. So that was nice and definitely helped with the SIJ pain, just sort of having those very focused restful periods. So that was what we did regularly, and walks and talks about how we think birth's going to go. And I asked Jackson how he felt about labour and birth, and he said, I feel okay. Like we did a few classes during from the hospital, but a lot of them he sort of said, I remember you talking about this when you were studying, or I remember you talking about this when you came home from work and we debrief. And he was a semi midwife himself by that point, so that was good. But I did make the effort to ask him what he was afraid of and what his fears were, because I think I had experienced so many labour and births, not my own obviously, that I kind of had an idea of how things potentially could go. So we talked a fair bit about how he was feeling about a few things as well, and that was helpful because then he, I guess, didn't bring that into the birth room, and he could support me in the entirety.
And having that knowledge, midwifery background, do you feel that helped to relax you, and did you feel that helped with the process of birth prep? Or
it did. I felt excited actually to labour, and I think also I think being a runner, I was excited to go with the mental kind of game of it too, because that's what I like about running is the how long can I go? How hard can I push this? Like, what can my body do? And I trust birth. So I was excited to see how my body would go. I definitely wavered during, especially when I was, some days I had to get Jackson to help me out of bed because I would roll onto the wrong side of my hip and I just couldn't get myself up, and I put on quite a bit of weight too, so I just felt heavy and everything was but I think all in all I just had to keep telling myself that I trust this process, I trust my baby, I trust my body, and it will be what it will be. And I think also doing all of the birth prep that I could in terms of the mental side of it, and then the physical, which I haven't really talked about yet, but made me it gave me back that sense of control in a moment where you start to realise that you don't really control your life anymore and you don't control your body and all those things. So it gave me that sense of, no matter what happens, I've done my best and I will be able to surrender to it because I've put my best foot forward. So then physical stuff was movement. I tried to maintain movement however I could. I started going to the local pool and just doing some water walking as well, which really felt quite nice. But some days I couldn't quite manage it with the way that my hip ended up being, and I finished work a bit earlier than I thought too, which was a mental thing as well, because you sort of think, oh my goodness, like I feel really helpless, but that was fine, and my workplace is very supportive, so that was good. But yes, we did perineal stretching, which was great. So we started doing that from, I think it's 36 weeks. And that was, again, partly funny, partly like I think it was useful because I didn't tear in the end. But yeah, and that was good. Sorry.
And one step back from that, where did you hear about perineal? Like, obviously you've got your midwifery background, but where did you hear about perineal stretching from, and how did you learn how to do it?
Yeah, so it was through my training, and I had taught women how to do it previously, but I watched the class in the resource section on FitNest Mama because I wanted to hear if there was new information and how to do it on yourself too, which I had never really thought about. But I think the biggest thing I took from that was I started doing it in the shower because I thought, I'll be relaxed and it's warm and all those things. But I listened to an episode with a lovely woman and with you, and she was saying that she was standing in the shower and you suggested that can cause like the opposite because it makes it more tense. So then I talked to Jackson about it, and he was fine with it because he's like, right, we're in this together, let's just get it done. And again, it provided moments of funny things, so it was all part and parcel.
So just for anyone listening that's thinking, what on earth are you talking about? Perineal massage has been found to reduce risk of 3rd and 4th degree perineal tears and episiotomy, and first-time mums in particular. It is something I teach mums inside FitNest Mama how to do. I tend to teach it a little bit different, I think, from standard, because I really do feel it's linked very much with like being able to do it with pelvic floor relaxation. I think it's key. Like whenever you massage something, you're not actually going to cause any permanent stretching. It's all about that mental ability to release your muscles, which is sort of what we want during childbirth. We want that birth canal to open and relax. So for anyone listening that's thinking, what are you talking about? That's what we're talking about. So thank you for explaining that, Noni. And so you mentioned there was no tearing, but before we get to that, was there anything else with the physical preparation that you did?
I did lots of, midwifery woo-woo that has, not great evidence, but good enough that I was like, I'm into it, like, eating the dates, although that does have reasonable evidence. So, yeah, eating dates have prostaglandins in them to help soften your cervix, hopefully make labour a little bit shorter. And so that, and what else did I do? I think I tried just about everything, which I won't delve into because, can't vouch for everything.
So how many weeks were you, like, at what stage did you go into labour? Or how did labour transpire, I should ask?
Labour started, I had a few stretch and sweeps to try to sort of get things started. And my decision for that was because Felix was estimated to be quite a big baby, and I was being cared for through the family birth centre. And so they sort of said, look, estimating a big bub, let's not sort of overcook baby too much, because the further along you go, the bigger the babies can get and all of the risks associated with that. But again, it's an estimation, and I decided to stop having growth scans at I think I was 32 weeks or something, because I sort of just went, well, I'm going to wear I understand the quote unquote risk, and I'm happy to believe in my body and know that I can birth the baby that I've been given. And also I trusted my care providers, which I was very fortunate had continuity of care, which is hands down probably the best thing that we did for our pregnancy. Very fortunate that was available for us. So had a lovely midwife, and we had the same sort of core team the whole way through. So yeah, I had a few stretch and sweeps, and ended up feeling a bit niggly, and nothing really ever came of them. And I had one on the Saturday, I think, that was a couple of days after my due date. I don't know. And then that Monday, I was like, oh, this is it. I was off for a walk, and I really started getting these quite sensational, I would call them, feelings. They a bit more than the niggles I had been getting. And they lasted about 5 or so hours. Like, it wasn't, I was ignoring them, but they were definitely there. I was still just got my dinner, had a shower, like tried to rest. I think we watched something funny on telly. And then I was like, right, I'm going to go to bed and I'll wake up, because I'd manifested, how I was going to have my labour. And it was basically going the exact way. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to go on the birth ball, I'm going to have my waters break, and then I'm going to go into the birth centre and have this gorgeous water birth, really, quick and easy. It'll just all be fantastic. And then, so I went to bed with those niggles, and I woke up with the birds chirping and the sun shining, and, nothing had happened. And I was like, oh no. So that was that. And then that was on the Monday. And then we had another couple of stretch and sweeps, and just nothing was happening. I was getting those kind of niggles, but nothing that lasted as long as that Monday. And then Saturday I went in for another stretch and sweep, and Felix's heart rate had dropped quite significantly following the stretch and sweep. So I went up to have an assessment and was popped onto the CTG, which is the monitor for baby's heart rate. And it just never really became normal. It wasn't dramatically scary, but it wasn't quite fitting the criteria, which they have very strict criteria to monitor our babies. Yeah, so the CTG was not abnormal, but not quite normal. And so I had one of the doctors come up, and she had assessed me. And then in terms of, she looked at the CTG, looked at the ultrasound on the bedside, and Bub wasn't moving that much on the ultrasound as well. So, which, he'd had quiet days and active days, but if anybody ever, is concerned about movements, they should always just get a check. And I had a feeling that he wasn't moving as much, but I was thinking, maybe it's just a quiet day. But then when the doctor had said he's not moving very much on the ultrasound, and his heart rate was having these, blips on the CTG, the doctor had said, look, let's wait 15 minutes and see what happens. And if the heart rate doesn't sort of get back to completely normal, I was 40-6 at that point. She said, let's just crack on and have a baby. And I sort of went, oh, okay, no worries. And then she sat me back up from the ultrasound, because I thought, yeah, good plan. Like, it was, getting that feeling where I was like, yeah, let's not push this. Sat me back up from having the ultrasound on the bedside, and his heart rate dropped really quite low and stayed quite low. And I could hear it as well. Oh, I'd had actually quite a sensational contraction whilst she was scanning me. And then once that had finished, his heart rate dropped. So we both just kind of looked at each other. I looked at Jackson, he looked at me, he looked at the doctor. We all just sort of just went, let's just move on, shall we, and get this happening. So I ended up moving into the labour and birth suite, and my midwife came up from the family birth centre, which was, again, very lucky that she was on shift, because it doesn't always happen, but you end up with someone anyway. So she came up, and I had a rupture of the membrane, so an artificial rupture of membranes. And not long after that, the contractions really ramped up. And it was like, okay, this is really happening. Like, I think once the waters had been released, he was just ready to go. Oh, and actually, when they release your waters, they have to do a vaginal exam to see how far along you are. And I was already 4 centimetres. So I'd obviously just been niggling away a little bit for, however long, who knows. But that was very heartening, because I thought, oh, like my body's got me to 4 centimetres, and I've only just been, because I was I should backtrack. On that Saturday, I was sort of feeling more kind of consistent, very light niggles. But because I'd had on and off all week, I was like, oh, it's just the same thing. Like it, it's nothing. And then whilst I was on the CTG, the midwives were saying, you're actually contracting. Can you feel these? And I was like, no, nah, because I'd just been ignoring them since that Monday. I was like, right, I'm ignoring completely until my body tells me it's ready to go. So I was like, no, not really. No, I'm good. I'm good. Because I didn't want to get too much into it and have my body work too hard before I really needed that energy. So I was trying to reserve, I guess. But waters were broken and it was all systems go. I put the TENS machine on, which was awesome. And I listened to or watched your resource on that as well. I think I just about devoured every piece of information like that. And then I sort of did all the things because I just couldn't get comfortable. Funny that.
Yeah.
So, we walked around the birth suite. I was on the fit ball bouncing. I was stomping. I was definitely breathing. I didn't stop breathing. My poor husband, I told him to count for me so I could breathe to the counts. And then he was counting, wrong. So I was like, you're counting wrong. Despite all of all of our preps and things like that, I was just like, but you don't know what you want until you're in it. And then even when you get what you think you want, it's still not what you want. But anyway, and I think I progressed quite quickly because at about, I think it was about 6 p.m, I had been lying on the bed with a peanut ball between my legs, which great for positioning of baby, but oh my goodness, so intense, like the feeling, that opening of the pelvis. And it was kind of nice for my hip too, which had actually started feeling really quite normal once I finished work and started resting and doing a lot more gentle movement. So I was very grateful because I wanted a really active labour. So it was, the pain was really, really minimal by the end of the pregnancy. So I was very grateful for that. But yeah, I ended up lying on the bed and I said to Jackson, get this peanut ball out from me. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to play. I've had enough. Like, this is ridiculous. And in all honesty, it had only been 2.5, I think, hours from when they ruptured my membranes. And I said, I didn't want any VEs or anything like that because I just thought, I'll just trust what's going on. But I said to my lovely midwife, I was like, I need you to check me and I am going to get an epidural because if this is going to go any longer, like 2 hours and I'm done. And I was thinking, oh my goodness. But
did they, sorry to interrupt, did they have the heart rate monitor still on you?
Yes, so that was still not quite normal. So it just sort of stayed, well, it was normal. Like he was reacting the way he was supposed to be, but it was still a little bit
sluggish.
Yeah, so I was being monitored quite closely with that. But because my contractions, like I got into like established labour reasonably quickly, I didn't need any further augmentation. So stayed with just the ARM, and I didn't end up having Synto, which was what I had agreed to do if required, because obviously inductions have a bit of a process and you start, at one point and see how that goes and follow the trajectory there. But his heart rate was normal enough that I didn't need further help, and my contractions were strong enough that, it was all just going fine.
Great.
CTGs are a tricky thing to interpret, and I won't, we won't go there, but it was still within the realms of acceptable. But then my midwife looked at me and she just smiled and said, why don't you just get in the shower then? And like, she was running the birth pool, and she goes, because we're going to need to put you in the pool soon, I think. And I was just like, but can you just check me? And she's like, no, just jump in the shower. And, because she's doing that smiling nod, and I'm thinking, she thinks I'm transitioning. I'm not transitioning. I'm just fed up. I've had enough. And anyway, I was like, oh, whatever. And I got in the shower, and then I was like, no, I really need you to check because this is just too much. And she said, well, why don't you check? And so I kind of went, oh, yeah, of course, I can do that. So I popped my leg up on the chair and I checked myself in terms of how dilated I was. And I couldn't feel any cervix because I could feel a head very close, which was amazing. So that gave me a lot of heart. And I thought, oh, my goodness, like this has been really quick. And I just was like, okay, I can do this. I am doing this. So that gave me a bit of a refresh and used the shower for quite a long time, then hopped in the birth pool. But then I started pushing once I was in the birth pool. But Felix's heart rate started dropping with those pushes, which is something that can happen too. But my midwife said, okay, you're going to have to pop out of the birth pool. I'm going to hit the buzzer. There's going to be a lot of people that come charging in, and, we're going to have to see what happens here. And I just went, okay, no problem. So, but it was an interesting thing because I've said the same thing to women many times. And then to have it said to me, I was like, oh, but this is so nice. Like, it's such a nice vibe. But at the same time, your head's like, yeah, like, let's have everybody in here. Let's make sure that my baby's safe. And I said to my husband, quick, get a towel to put over my legs because I was completely naked. And he looked at me and he's like, are you serious? And I was like, good point. No, it's fine, because I thought it's all, it is what it is at that point. So had some people come in, and then his heart rate recovered once I was out of the birth pool and in a different position. And, I'd had a few contractions, and it was back to being quite normal. So that was good. But then had the same lovely doctor that was there before come in, and another doctor who I also know because I birthed at the hospital where I work. So I knew a lot of the people, which was actually quite nice. So had ended up having two lovely doctors that I knew. Then the second midwife came in and I knew her as well, and my midwife was still there. So it felt like a really lovely, supportive, moment. But his heart rate started dropping again. So it was a bit like, right, get on and push. And at that point, he was really quite low. And so I had a lot of strong encouragement and was hearing everything. That's the interesting thing. Like, you're so insular, but at the same time, you're so aware of what's going on around you. And I heard my midwife say to Jackson, come and birth your baby. And he went, what? We didn't discuss this. And I went, oh, I forgot to tell you, Jackson, that I put it in the birth plan that I wanted you to birth the baby. So,
surprise.
Surprise. So then, even though I could hear, that my midwife kept saying, his heart rate's fine, you're okay, his heart rate's fine, but, we do need you to push. So that was really a great moment where I was like, right, he's really coming now. So then was pushing, and when he was born, it was just the most relieving feeling that you've ever experienced. It's like, thank goodness. And I had quite a short labour, so I can only imagine what some women must experience when it goes on and on and on. But in saying that too, I can appreciate that. And this is what I say to women that I've cared for, that a short labour is not necessarily an easy labour because your body still goes through all the processes. It's just a lot quicker. And I was okay with that because I'd seen labour before, but I could definitely appreciate that if you hadn't experienced labour in any capacity, that would be really overwhelming. So, if people say to you, oh, well done, that was quick, feel free to say, actually, no, my body worked just as hard as yours, or whatever you want to say, because I tell you, like, it is really, it's intense. I felt like I sprinted a marathon instead of jogging it. It was, it was a lot.
Absolutely. It took me years. Like, people kept saying, oh my gosh, your birth was so quick. And it would annoy me every single time. And I couldn't articulate why it would annoy me when they made that comment. It's like, anyway. How quick was it from start to finish?
I think it was 4 hours and 40 minutes. Something.
Yeah, wow. And how long was the pushing phase?
about an hour and
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So not too long really, but I kept thinking, I'm really just like giving, singing your praises, but it's true. I'm not just saying this. I was in the birth pool.
This is not scripted, everyone.
It's not scripted, I promise, but it was just the plunger, like for the
yes.
birth prep, and you use that plunger breath, because I was like, oh yeah, like everybody says it's just like doing a poo, but I was like, that doesn't really work for my head. Like I don't get, but that like, compressing down and plunging the coffee down, I kept thinking that. And then when they were like, you've really got to push now. And I was like, oh, but what about my pelvic floor? But, I've got a healthy, happy baby, and it's fine. So.
And how is your pelvic floor, if you don't mind me asking?
I have a little bit of dysfunction. I started trying to get back into running a while ago, maybe around a bit after 12 weeks.
Yeah.
No, it was probably a bit more than that, but it was just slow progress based off, your time and your energy and all of that. And then I had a few walk runs, which were really good. I was feeling really strong in my pelvic floor. Then Christmas happened, had a big long break, break from doing pelvic floor exercises, which sounds ridiculous because you should just be able to do them anyway, but to like lay down and do them properly, I was doing them like ad hoc, but doing them properly kind of went on hiatus. And then got back from our little holiday and I went for a bit of a jog, and I felt my bladder release. So that was a bit of a moment, because I was like, right, I'm not as strong and as ready as I thought I was. And that was only maybe a few weeks ago. So that was around about 5.5 months. So I am now seeing a pelvic floor in the flesh.
Yeah, great.
Which I had been doing anyway, but this one is a bit more directed at return to exercise rather than just full kind of pelvic floor health. So yeah.
And if you're listening, any red flags like that, any leaking, prolapse symptoms, bulge, lump, pain, discomfort, I'm so of the opinion, if you get it out, checked out, then you can stop worrying about it. You can feel like you've got an action plan. Like you're much better off nipping it in the bud than waiting for years and years.
Yeah.
Go, if you can, go and check it out with a face-to-face assessment with your local pelvic floor physio.
And I think, she had said that there's no concerning factors for prolapse, which is great, because I felt this is something also that I think I want to say, because I hadn't considered it, but I felt different like my vagina felt different, and I felt like my pelvic area just all felt different. And I was thinking, I've got a prolapse, definitely, because it feels weird. But the physio said, well, there's going to be a normal level of laxity, and there's going to be, it's a really fine line. And we, as people who aren't trained in pelvic floor health, are not supposed to know that. So that is, again, why you go and get checked, because is it a prolapse or is it just that sort of new normal?
Yeah,
you don't
absolutely.
know. But I hadn't considered it, and I hadn't really thought about the fact that, of course, your body is going to feel different. Like you've done an amazing thing, and you've birthed a baby. Like you can't ever say. So
it's funny you say that, because after the birth of my third baby, I felt like I had, in those first 6 weeks, I felt like I had a tampon stuck inside me, even though I had no tampon.
Exactly how I said to my friends, it feels like there's a tampon in there.
And then I went to my obstetrician for the 6-week check. I said, I think I've got a prolapse. This is what I'm feeling. And they did a prolapse test, which is very different to what a pelvic floor physio test would consist of. They use this piece of equipment that I was like, oh my gosh, what are you putting inside me? Anyway, he said I didn't have a pelvic prolapse. I'm still not that convinced, but the symptoms went away. And I know that at certain times of the month, and depending on what I do, my uterus does sit lower and my bladder is a bit more floppy, but generally it's asymptomatic. And anyway, so I think that is quite common. And that's the thing with assessments. It depends also. if you're doing, as a pelvic floor physio, if you're doing a prolapse assessment, you can get different results. Let's say if it's in the morning versus the afternoon, you know, if you've had a cough and you've been coughing versus if you're well. So you can get different assessment results, you know, day to day and within the day, you know, within the month, a different cycle, you know, stage of your cycle. So yes,
and that just goes back to what you were saying about making sure you get checked, because there's so much nuance to it, and, you know, working with somebody that knows those ins and outs is definitely a good thing. And that's exactly how I felt, but I don't feel that sort of sensation with vagina anymore, which is good. And I've had a couple of very short walk runs, I think, you know, 1 minute running, 1 minute jogging, walking, and I haven't had any more
amazing
leaking. So far so good. But the physio did say, what's your return to running plan? Have you got a marathon that you'd like to do? And I said to her, look, if I never run another, you know, long run in my life, I don't care. I just want, even if it's like going out for a 2K run every second day for the rest of my life, I would be happy with that.
Yeah. So, it's more about the mental. Do you feel it's more about the mental health benefits rather than?
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, like, you having had a baby, everything changes so much that I think running is still something I can do that's still a part of who I was, but can also become who I am as a mum as well, like running with Felix as he gets older and things like that. So
it's something you can do for you and be selfish about it in a good way.
Yes.
And you mentioned, it's very interesting because before we hit record, and hope you don't mind me saying, I said, how's it all going? And you said probably one of the hardest parts about being a mother is adjusting to motherhood, and how before you've had your baby and before you get pregnant, it's all about you, and we can be very selfish. You know, it's great. And then suddenly it's all turned upside down and it's no longer all about you. Yeah. Is that right? And recapping what you just mentioned? And
I think also, like, runners, I say we, but I guess it was how I identified. It was part of what I was. And going through that transition from woman to mother, you have that loss of identity, and you feel as though you're clutching at straws. And so I got almost really quite down, thinking I would never run again, because I was thinking, well, who am I then? If I'm not the person that I was, and that entailed, you know, XYZ, and I can't do XYZ, who am I? But it's 6 months in, I'm starting to kind of feel out who I am again, and, you know, more than just a runner or whatever, but at the same time, it's a very big part of who I am.
Absolutely.
But yes, also for the mental side of things, the days that I get out for a walk are infinitely better than the days I don't.
It's a feeling of self-achievement, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Especially when you know, Jackson's at work, you kind of like, oh, I did it by myself.
Absolutely.
It's like so small. Like, I went to the shop and I bought some bread and I did that, but you feel very achieved. And I think also, I was talking to some friends about this, but the focus on pregnancy and birth is huge. And I was the same, because I was like, I'll just take postpartum as it comes. It's fine. Like, I can't control it, whatever. But I would really urge people to put some things in place for themselves before, like, during their pregnancy, be it, you know, have a cook-off with your girlfriends. If people say, what gifts do you want for the baby? Say, I don't want gifts, I want food, or whatever it is, because, you know, you having that support is really, really important. And our family are not here. We have some really great friends, and that's been amazing, but having people around, you know, to do the mundane things like your laundry and this, that, the other thing, that's important. So I don't know, maybe talking to your family about, come around and do a load of washing for me once a week. That'd be great. Or just asking and accepting help, which is a big thing for most people in our society, I think, because we all are just such doers and we do it ourselves and we're fine. But it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love everything you have just said. And it's a process though, isn't it? We can't suddenly flick a switch and, change personas, but that's sort of what motherhood, the expectations, not expectations, that's the wrong word, but that's sort of what happens when you have a baby. One day you're not a mum, and then the next day, bang, it's all mum. And asking for help, it's all easy to say, but I still hate asking for help, and it's not. It's.
And someone says, would you like help with that? And you're like, oh, no, that's okay, thanks. Like,
and you're thinking, yes,
but no. But I was thinking about, like, everyone has baby showers and they're amazing. And I had one and it was lovely. But I think in hindsight, especially for a first-time mum, I think, like, we didn't play games or anything like that, but if that's your thing, like you could, if you're clever, you could kind of come up with a game of like how you could make it work for you for in the future. Like where, gifts, I don't know, you give everyone a come in and I don't know, but you could make it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. But I also think sometimes you're not ready to hear it until you're ready to hear it.
That's true.
I think as well. Everyone's different, but I didn't want to hear about motherhood because it felt like such a unknown, scary thing. That was my sort of coping mechanism, which wasn't a good coping mechanism. But anyway.
I started listening to a book, which actually maybe now I should start re-listening to. I think it was something about matrescence, which, that's a whole nother thing. But I started listening when Felix was quite little, and I felt really overwhelmed by some of the things she was talking about, and I didn't want to hear it because I was like, I don't want to hear how hard this is going to be. But I think potentially, like, looking into it even before you get pregnant, because as a woman, even if you never have children, but as a woman, understanding those processes that women go through, I think is really important. And we all know about, when your menstrual cycle starts, we know what to expect with that. The language around that is becoming really mainstream and common, and it's a really great thing. Likewise, I think menopause is getting a lot of airtime where we're starting to have more understanding about that. But I think, and of course pregnancy and birth, big massive topics that everyone can talk to for hours, as we do, but the postpartum, I think, is something that is starting to get a bit more light on it. But if we can communicate about it in the same way that we do pregnancy, birth, menopause, and the period as well, like starting your menstruation, I think that's, if we all start talking about it, then it becomes normal, and our husbands start to understand well. And that's a really important thing, is having that person that you live with understanding what you're going through, understanding the hormone shifts, and that it's normal to be abnormal, because it's just wild. Love beautiful that. Crazy, but wild.
That's the name. That'd be a good book name. Beautiful, crazy, but wild. Now, just one thing I wrote down while you're talking. I didn't want to interrupt you, but you used this term a few times, and I haven't heard it before. You called it a sensational contraction.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk us through that use of language?
Funny, I said it to someone, and during that stage, because, like, I guess it was my way of trying to explain what I was feeling. So I felt as though, everyone uses the terms niggles or contraction, or like, starting to ramp up, or whatever the language is. But it just came out one day, and I kind of liked it. So I stuck saying
You're not wanting to say necessarily that it was big or painful.
It was just
You're
a bit more
to say
like,
it was...
like it kind of caught me a little bit, I guess, and was a bit more, had a bit more oomph to it. But, not like a period pain. It's different. It's somewhat pain.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how to explain it, but it was a bit like, oh, I'm feeling this. Like, this is the sensation. And also I think that word sensation, not that I thought this when I said it, I just sort of rolled off the tongue, but then I was like, and I overthought it, as I always do. And I think it kind of lends to either thing. Like, hypnobirthing, they say a surge or a wave or whatever. But a sensation, it can be awful. That's fine.
Yeah.
Have an awful sensation. And if that's how you appreciate that feeling and that's your experience, or it can be a great sensation. So
interesting. I love it.
Fluid. Yeah.
Okay. Noni, to round out this conversation,
yes,
if someone's listening today, they're pregnant for the first time, perhaps it's their first birth story they've listened, or maybe they've listened to 100. Either way, what advice, now that you're a seasoned mother of a 6-month-old baby, what advice would you give to this parent who's going through it for the first time?
Oh, wow. So being prepared, I suppose, as best as you can, like choosing what aligns with you for your pregnancy and birth and sticking to that. Listen to all the books and the podcasts to get yourself ready. There's a couple of really great books that I listened to a few times, as I mentioned, and sticking up for yourself and knowing, what you want and negotiating that with your care provider and, doing what feels right for you and your partner, because that's the important part. You walk away from it thinking, did I do everything I could? And, yes, you did. It depends on how your mind works, but that's how my mind works. But then for parenthood, I guess, nothing is normal, but everything is normal. And again, advocate for yourself. If you're feeling any symptoms of pelvic floor issues, get them addressed, because I think most women wait 7 years to see somebody, and that is too long. And if you felt at all the way I felt, really down about feeling like your body had let you down and how are you going to move forward in this new body, do something about it and address that, because that gave me a bit more oomph as well, because I was thinking, right, I'm again doing all that I can, but being honest with yourself and being honest with the people around you and accepting help where possible, and also accepting any food that anyone ever offers you.
That's number one, right?
Number one. Like I was like, I don't really do gluten and I eat mostly plants and blah, 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 blah. And now I'm like, I will eat anything, like give me the things, like, and also eating intuitively during pregnancy and birth, because I started eating a lot of meat and I didn't have any low iron, I didn't have any anemia, I'm good, I didn't hemorrhage, all those things. So listen to your body and trust.
Love it.
Because she knows.
Love it. Thank you so much, Noni. Thank you for sharing your story today. It's always an honour. I really appreciate your time today. And thank you for being a beautiful member inside FitNest Mama.
Thank you.
Wishing you all the very best. Do stay in touch with your journey beyond. And thank you for sharing your story. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the FitNest Mama podcast, brought to you by the FitNest Mama freebies found at www.fitnestmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at FitNest Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer: materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I'll see you soon.